Click the bell icon to get latest videos from Ekeeda.
Hello friends, we'll be discussing certain illustrations which refers to treatment of goodwill in this specific video. So what we have learned about treatment of goodwill is that the goodwill that is brought in by the partner has to be adjusted in a specific way, and the detailing of such goodwill is supposed to be done using sacrificing ratio. This sacrificing ratio is calculated with a formula which is old minus new. That means old ratio minus new ratio is the formula that is supposed to be used. The amount which is calculated as per the sacrificing ratio has to be moved into the capitals of the existing partners. Now we have an illustration mentioned here. Let's go through this illustration and understand how to go ahead with the calculation of these specific things. Let's go ahead and figure it out. We have assets and liabilities mentioned here. There is a problem that has been shared here. Trade payables has been mentioned as 20,000 and the capital amount of yellow and green has been mentioned here. Yellow's capital is 25,000 and green's capital is 20,000. So you have two partners basically, yellow and green, with the capital amount being mentioned in the liability side of the balance sheet, which is given for your reference. The cash at bank is 10,000 rupees, which has been mentioned. Sundry assets amount figures to 55,000. So these are the details that has been provided with the balance sheet whose tally is 65,000. So whatever amount of tally is done here, the amount is 65,000 that comes up in this specific question. Now in the question it has been mentioned that the old ratio of yellow and green was mentioned as 3:2. This is the old profit sharing ratio that has been mentioned in this question. A new partner black was supposed to be introduced in this specific firm with the condition that he would pay up 20,000 as capital. So 20,000 as capital is supposed to be brought in by this specific partner, and that has to be further shared with the existing partners in the sacrificing ratio. Goodwill calculation was done for 3 years purchase on the basis of average profit method. Now for average profit method, they have given you certain years and the profit related to it. So 2007, 2008, we had a profit of 9,000 and 14,000 accurately mentioned here. For 2009 and 10, we have a profit of 12,000 and 13,000 being mentioned here. The new ratio is mentioned as 6:5:5. That means whenever you have to deal with the new profit sharing ratio, now you don't have to go ahead and figure out what would be the new profit sharing ratio because it is already mentioned. The goodwill amount is also supposed to be calculated basis on the method of average profit, because here in this question they have mentioned years profit for the backdated 4 years. So we'll go ahead with the calculation of goodwill first and then figure out what is the difference here, and then we'll teach you one more concept of sacrificing and gain in this specific illustration itself. So now here we have calculated the sacrificing ratio for yellow first because we have the details of old minus new. Now whenever we have to go ahead further with the discussion, here we'll be teaching you another concept. The difference here will be mentioned when we figure out the answer. So let's go ahead and figure out how the calculation for sacrificing ratio has been done here. The formula states old minus new, that is the ratio. old ratio for yellow was 3 upon 5, out of which subtraction will be done for the new ratio, that is 6 upon 16. So if you calculate the LCM which has been mentioned here, the denominator comes to 80, however the numerator comes to 18. So this is the answer you need to keep here. Further going to this, you can also simplify it to 9 upon 40 because there is division possible here. But if possible, just keep it the original answer itself, that is 18 upon 80. Now with this thing, we give you another concept to your reference. If in case this 18 upon 80 was into negative signature, that means a negative sign was available here or available here, then in certain scenarios you need to mention that as gain ratio and not as sacrificing ratio. So that is the gain ratio that you need to understand. If in case only if there is a negative signature, that means if you subtract new ratio from the old ratio and if the answer comes into negative, that is the gain that that specific partner has earned. So that specific partner needs to compensate the other partners who has lost out in such merger or such admission of partners. That is something that we'll discuss later on, but this is the reference that we had to give you whenever there is a gain ratio that is mentioned in the question or if it comes out to your picture. Now let's figure out the ratio for green. So the sacrificing ratio for green has also been calculated. Is the same calculation that we have to apply that we did for yellow, and the answer that we get here is 7 upon 80. The same LCM factor is supposed to be mentioned whenever you have to deal with these kind of details in calculation of sacrificing ratio. Now you have figured out the sacrificing ratio for yellow and green, that is for the existing partners. Now you further go ahead with the calculation of goodwill. So now that we have figured out the sacrificing ratio, let's go ahead and calculate the goodwill for this specific illustration. The goodwill amount has been also mentioned in this question. Now if you understand or if you can see the denotions that has been mentioned here, there is no specific trend that we can observe. There is no increasing trend, there is no decreasing trend. Had it been there was any increasing or decreasing trend, we would have used the weighted average problem or weighted average method. But in this case, as there is no such option available, we'll use simple average method. Now the total of all the profit that comes for the 4 years is 48,000. So this is the 48,000 total profit for all these years. To figure out the average profit via simple method, just divide 48,000 by the number of years. That means 4 years profit, so divided by 4. So the average profit that has been calculated is mentioned here. Now this thing will further go ahead, or rather will further go ahead with the calculation of the profit sharing ratio, which has to be going further segregated into the existing partners. That means sacrificing ratio will be used here for calculation of 3 years purchase or whatever goodwill purchase which has been mentioned in the question. Now when they have mentioned that the average profit is 12,000 as per simple average profit method, and the goodwill purchase is supposed to be done for 3 years, so goodwill calculation has to be done in a specific way now. So if the average profit has been determined as 12,000, goodwill for 3 years purchase will be 36,000, that is 12,000 multiplied by 3. Now the share of the partner is supposed to be mentioned here in either of the partners of the old firm, that is in yellow's account and in green account, will be based on the calculation of goodwill itself using the sacrificing ratio. So 36,000 will be further used or rather multiplied with the sacrificing ratio of each of the partner that was calculated earlier. So for yellow it was 18 upon 80 and for green it was 7 upon 80. Now the share of goodwill or rather the subscription, or further we can going ahead talk about the kind of goodwill segregation that has been done here as per the sacrificing ratio for both yellow and green has been mentioned in the specific format. So for yellow we have an amount of 8,100 which will be credited to his account. And for green we have 3,150 as an amount which will be credited to his account. Now the journal entries that has to be passed is passed in two formats. First, the capital amount that is brought in by the new partner, and second, the segregation of that specific partner's capital to be moved as a part of goodwill segregation that has been done here. So let's figure that out. So if you can see the journal entries that has been passed here is the first entry, that means the capital amount brought in by the new partner, that is black. So bank account debit to black's capital account. 20,000 is the amount that is supposed to be credited, and the second part refers to the capital account of black being debited in respect of the profit sharing ratio which is supposed to be shared, or rather the compensation black has to give to the existing partners yellow and green in the form of the goodwill calculation that we did earlier. So that will be black's capital account debit to yellow's capital account with the amount of goodwill calculation that we have done, 8,100, and to green's capital with the amount of 3,150 which is supposed to be calculated as per green's calculation. So the total amount is 11,250. Now with this segregation you understand that the journal entries that has been passed here has consideration of black's capital. So the capital amount which was brought in by the partner has been now reduced to the amount of segregation or the compensation that has been given by black to the existing partners. So this is how the goodwill calculation is supposed to be done when the sacrificing ratio is given, or rather when the sacrificing ratio is supposed to be calculated on the basis of first old ratio and new ratio. In those segregation you can also understand that the new ratio has to be calculated of all the existing partners using the 1/4 ratio or the 1 whole minus segregation of the ratio that has been given, or if the ratio is already given in the question, that's well and good. Once that is done, then you have to calculate the goodwill, either if the goodwill amount is directly mentioned or if you have to use any of the methods that we have done earlier, like average profit method, super profit method, annuity or capitalization method. Any method can be used to do this thing. Once that is done, then you need to go ahead and calculate what is the amount of compensation that will be provided to the existing partners by the new partner in the form of goodwill, and after that you have to go ahead with the journal entries. So I hope this illustration give you a clarity about the structure that you have to format, or the structure that you have to go ahead and form whenever admission of partner is supposed to be done and the treatment of goodwill is supposed to be given here. So thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with Ekeeda and keep subscribing to Ekeeda.